Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our final panel of the day, Syria and the regional implications of the crisis. It's wonderful to see such a strong turnout for our final panel. It speaks to just how urgent the issue is that we are addressing today. I just want to tell you a little bit about the genesis of this panel. It's an extension of a discussion about this very same topic that began in Istanbul last June, hosted by the Halling Center for International Dialogue. And they brought together many of the panelists who are here today, Geneive, Randa, Saban, and Ekaterina, to really look at how the Syrian crisis is spilling over into the neighboring countries and who some of the players are that can help address and bring a solution about to the crisis. So we've gathered them again today, and then tomorrow they'll be meeting for 3 hours with some other panelists, and we're going to be turning their findings, their discussions into a report for wide distribution. We're very excited about this project. We want to thank very much George Gavrilis and Danielle Duffy of the Halling Center for making today's event and the publication to follow possible. Now I want to introduce our moderator, Kardas, whose bio I will keep very brief because I think so many of us know her. Kim has been the BBC State Department radio and TV correspondent since 2008 and travels regularly with the Secretary of State covering U.S. foreign policy. She was previously a Middle East correspondent for the BBC and the Financial Times based in Beirut, where we used to report together. Most importantly, she has what looks to be a fabulous, fabulous book coming out in March called The Secretary, A Journey with Hillary Clinton from Beirut to the Heart of American Power. So I certainly very much look forward to welcoming that book in March. Now, Kim, I'd like to turn the panel over to you.
Thank you very much. Just checking whether the mics are on. Yes. Kate, thank you very much for this very generous introduction. And thank you all for being here at the end of a very long but very interesting day with a lot of fascinating panels about the issues that are of the latest urgent importance in the Middle East. But perhaps the most urgent question at the moment is, of course, the ongoing conflict in Syria. It's been almost 2 years since that uprising has started. It was peaceful at first, but it has become increasingly more violent with regional repercussions that we've seen both for Turkey, Lebanon, to some extent Israel, of course, as well, Iraq and Iran. And the devastation for Syria, such a beautiful country that I reported on for many, many years, has really been heartbreaking with close to 30,000 people killed, of course, most of them civilians. Now, in August of last year, President Obama said that it was time for President Assad to step down, and yet he is still there, hanging on to power. So does anything change now that President Obama has been re-elected? Is it really on his to-do list? And to discuss these issues, we have an amazing group of panelists that are going to take us through some of the different issues. I will not list all of their achievements. There are many, but you have their detailed bios. I will just very briefly introduce them with the issues that they will be discussing. To my left is Amir Al-Azm. He is from Syria. He will be bringing us real insider knowledge of that country and what is going on there. Right. Isn't it? Did I make a mistake?
No, absolutely.
Because, this is a country that reporters haven't been able to get access to very easily. So getting an accurate picture of what is going on inside the country, I believe, is key. And, expert knowledge is certainly needed. You were, I believe, in Hama yourself in 1982, or you were in Syria.
I was in Hama in 1982.
So you've seen the destruction that can be wrought by the regime firsthand. And even though you have spent quite a few years abroad now, you do have your finger very much on the pulse, because I remember, Amir, almost a year ago, I believe it was last summer, you told me about Riyad Saif, and you told me that this dissident, a former member of parliament, was the man for the job when it came to leading the Syrian opposition. And here we are, a year later, Riyad Saif is in the leadership of the opposition with Suhair Atassi and Muaz al-Khatib. So we will be looking to hear from you about what next for Syria, what can the opposition really achieve. Next to Amr, we have Shaban Kardas from Turkey, the TOBB University in Ankara. Turkey is very much involved in what is going on. They tried but failed for a long time to reason with President Assad. And I assume that President Erdogan or Prime Minister Erdogan and the foreign minister feel personally snubbed because this was really part of their attempt to have zero problem policy in the region. And instead now they have thousands of Syrian refugees inside their border. There's been artillery fire exchanges between Syria and Turkey. So we'll be looking to hear from you about how is the conflict in Syria impacting Turkey's domestic and regional policies and its relationship with the United States, perhaps, because there does seem to be some frustration when it comes to what the United States is doing, that frustration inside Turkey. But it appears there isn't a real Turkish plan about how to move this forward, and there is now talk about positioning Patriot missiles from NATO on the border with Syria. Next to Shaban, we have Geneive Abdo, a fellow at the Stimson Center. Geneive, you wrote a piece in Foreign Affairs in August last year about how Iran keeps President Assad in power, and they certainly have succeeded in doing that. They do that with weapons, technology, and expertise. This is what you wrote. One year on, what are Iran's calculations really? And how far will they go? How far will the Iranians go to protect this front? They see Syria as the first front of defense, their line of defense against the United States and Israel. And perhaps you might be touching on how does all this factor into the nuclear negotiations between the US and the West on the one hand and Iran. And then more regional repercussions. Lebanon, of course, will turn to Randa, a fellow Lebanese and a fellow at the New America Foundation. Randa, you wrote recently a piece about President Assad, and it was titled The Survivor. And that is certainly a very apt title, not just for President Bashar al-Assad, but for his father as well. They have gone through many ups and downs. They always land on their feet. Will they be able to survive that? But we'll be looking for you also to tell us about one of their mechanisms of survival. They get a lot of help from Hezbollah. We'll be listening to hear your take on what Hezbollah's calculations are at this stage. Obviously, they see Syria as a first line of defense for them as well, but are they perhaps starting to hedge their bets and plan for the post-Assad period, if it comes? And then finally, last but not least, we have Ekaterina Stepanova. She's the head of the Peace and Conflict Studies Unit at the Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow. And Ekaterina, you'll be bringing us this other worldview, because we hear a lot about why the West doesn't want Assad to stay in power, but clearly the Russians don't agree with that. And there is some anger, criticism, but also bewilderment at the Russian position. So I think our discussion will be greatly enriched by your input about this. Ekaterina, you wrote that in a way the Russian position and its veto at the UN suits the West, because there isn't really any appetite at the moment. Certainly there hasn't been over the last year, and we don't know whether there will be in the days coming ahead. There hasn't been any appetite for intervention. So the question is, can there be a transition in Syria without intervention, particularly now with this new leadership for the opposition? But Russia doesn't seem to be interested in backing that opposition. We know that the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, is touring the Gulf now, and they do back that opposition, so it will be interesting to see what comes out of that. But without further ado, Amr, we're looking for your expertise. If you'd like to take to the podium.
Oh, you want me up there? Okay.
You have 13 minutes. I've been instructed to be very strict, and I will give you a warning.
Hello? We're good. When Kate sent me the email telling me what she would like me to do here, she gave me a long list of topics I would be expected to touch on. And then I saw 13 to 15. I thought, wow, 13 to 15 hours would be just about right. Unfortunately, we only have 13 to 15 minutes. In fact, I've just been warned it's 13, so I will hammer my way through. I'd like to begin by saying that it is all too easy in gatherings as such to focus simply on the analysis, the facts, and the figures, and to forget that there is also a human dimension to this tragedy. In an effort to humanize this panel ever so slightly, I'd just like to begin by reminding us and reminding us very briefly of how it all began. It began when a group of children in Dara wrote on the school walls, "الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام." The people want to topple the regime. And for their efforts, they were imprisoned, horribly tortured, and as a result of that, the uprising began in Syria. This uprising very quickly, and this particular cry, "الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام," essentially pitched the protesters and set the people on a course of a very bloody confrontation with the Assad regime. Today, 18 months later, we are still counting the costs. Over 40,000 dead, many more imprisoned, and millions displaced. With that, I'd like to give you a brief analysis of where we are today. The way I see the situation in Syria, I see stalemate. Right now we have a stalemate on the military and political fronts. On the military front, I would like to remind you, as much as we like to see, Free Syrian Army sort of soldiers occupying, positions, taking out border crossings, but the reality is as such. Not a single major city has fallen in the hands of the opposition. And by major cities, I'm talking about the capitals or the main cities of the provinces. I'm counting here Daraa, Damascus, Homs, Hama, Idlib, Aleppo, Deir ez-Zor, Palmyra, Tadmor, and the coastal cities. Not one of those cities has fully fallen into the hands of the opposition. So with that, then the regime can still claim to be in control of the country. What the regime has done is essentially abandon the countryside, the rural areas, but then it can reach those areas at any time it chooses with its long-range artillery and its air force. On the other side, you have the opposition. And the opposition does not have the ability to neutralize the not insignificant resources that are still available to the regime. Yes, the regime has taken some hits. Yes, its equipment has basically been degraded in many areas. But remember, we have not also seen the very heavy equipment of the regime, the real main battle tanks, that are all still kept in reserve, most of them around Damascus, and probably will be used in the final battle for Damascus and perhaps later on. So, in short, the regime has had some hits, has had a lot of its, hardware, its basic hardware degraded, but it still has a considerable punch to deliver, and the opposition still has not been able to mount sufficient effective counterforce to take those major cities and hold them. On the political front, well, what can I tell you? A disunited, fractious opposition, both inside and outside, and best exemplified by the SNC, the Syrian National Council. These disunited and fractious would be the least colorful sobriquets by which the Syrian opposition has often been described. Now, the stalemate, as I described it, politically with a disunited, dysfunctional opposition, militarily on the ground with the fact that the regime still holds all these major cities, has three major effects. For starters, it has seriously hampered the ability of the international community to deliver support, both military and humanitarian. And this has been very noticeable in recent months. It has also, more importantly, created a political vacuum. The lack of a clear and well-led opposition with a clear agenda, a clear vision, has created this political vacuum that has now been exploited by radical Islamist and Salafi entities and groups which have been filtering into Syria, and although are not as yet, I know some people in the West like to think of this as a major problem. It's not yet a big problem, but it is growing. And, if it's not contained, it will become a serious issue later on.